What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we are checking out the Randall Thrasher 50. Let's do it! Alright, hope you guys are doing great out there today. If this is your first time at my channel, my name is Kyle, and what I do is I take awesome high gain amps, cabinets, speakers, overdrives, guitars, pickups, I record them with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into East End or thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that can't stop chewing on their fingernails, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks. All right guys, for today, we are checking out the Randall Thrasher 50. This is one of the FORTIN designed Randall Venture amps. The Thrasher and the Satan share a lot of similarities in my opinion. I actually prefer the Thrasher to the Satan just a little bit because it seems to have a little bit more in the upper mids than the Satan did. But overall, I just have not been the biggest fan of the Randall and FORTIN designed amps. They're just a little bit too modern for me, a little bit too sterile. They don't quite have the upper mids placed where I particularly like them. And then this one, I feel like the treble and the presence frequencies are okay, but I kind of struggle with them on the Diablo series. It's like the presence is just not placed high enough and you can't get that top end sizzle that I like out of it. But yeah, overall, I'm just not the biggest fan of these amps. And again, that is my personal opinion. If you guys have these amps and you love them, that is great. There is nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying these are bad amplifiers by any means. So some people seem to take my opinion rather personally, but it's just that. It's my opinion. It may mean absolutely nothing to you, and that's fine. So don't take it personally. Don't get your feelings hurt if I don't like your favorite amp. But yeah, overall, the first time that I owned this amp, I was really excited to have it. I found that I like it okay on its own, but as soon as I would use it in a band setting, it just kind of seemed to disappear. And I remember talking on the forums back in the day, like going on Rig Talk, and a lot of people really liked this amp on the Rig Talk forum, and I just kind of didn't get along with it. And again, I feel like I hurt people's feelings by just not liking the amps that they like. People apparently hold their opinions on gear very close to their heart, and it really just hurts their fragile little feelings if you don't like what they like. That's just something that I've noticed over the years. It's really silly. But anyways, I remember posting that this amp versus a dual rectifier or a 5150 that my other guitarist was using at the time, it just seemed to kind of disappear. As soon as he would come in, like I could not hear my Thrasher, and that was through a vintage 30 loaded cab with my Gibson 498T loaded Les Paul Studio, the same stuff that I've been playing for years and had no problems with my XXX or my rectifier, my 5150 kind of sitting where they needed to in the mix. No matter how I had the tone stack switch set or the mid set on this amp, it just seemed to kind of disappear. So that was my personal experience with it. On its own, I think it's pretty good. I actually kind of like it. One thing that I've noticed about the FORTIN design Randall amps is the low end is not as tight as you would think that it would be. It doesn't have that same kind of clankiness that like a 5150, a XXX, or some of the Marshall stuff has. It's a little rounder on the low end, and I've never really been able to get that super tight, clanky feel out of either the Diablo amps or out of the Thrasher. I feel like the Satan does a little bit better job, but that could just be, you know, my experience or the one that I had. So anyways, I'm gonna stop talking because I'm already talking too much. We're gonna get into demoing this amp. I am running it through my Mezza Barba 412 cabinet that has UK V30s and redbacks in an X pattern. We have an SM57 on the V30. On that intro clip, I was just using a simple tube screamer, a TS9 in front of the amp, and it seemed to react pretty well to that overdrive. I am using my Schecter Apocalypse E1 with Duncan Black Winter pickups in it, so you guys should be fairly familiar with how those pickups sound. They seem to be pretty popular. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put everything at noon. I'm gonna put the tone stack switch in the up position. This amp, real quick, I guess we'll go over the controls. This amp has a couple different things that you don't normally see on a lot of amps that aren't Randalls. One of them being the tone stack switch. This essentially adjusts the tone stack, duh, it's a tone stack switch, to 3 different settings within the amp that all affect how the bass, middle, and treble interact with each other. It also affects where the mids and the lows and everything else sit. So really you have 3 different voicings essentially in this amp with that tone stack switch, plus you have your standard bass, middle, treble controls in order to fine tune them. On top of that, you have your standard gain knob, but over here you have your low and your high frequency gain controls, and that also affects the frequencies within the amp and how they react to each other. So you've got a lot of different ways to dial this amp to try and suit it to whatever guitar cab or speaker or pickup that you're using. So we have lots of options to go over. There is also a built-in boost here, so we will take a look at that as well. But for now, I'm gonna put everything back to noon. I'm gonna dial the high and low frequency gain knobs to noon. We're gonna bump it back down to 9 o'clock on the gain. No overdrives engaged. I just have the Rev G8 gate and nothing else on right now, and here is how the amp sounds like that. All right, so it is pretty bright and clanky as we have it set right now. Let's actually add some of that low frequency gain control, a little bit of bass, and take out a little bit of treble. All right, so it's already balanced, or more balanced right off the bat just by making those little adjustments. Let's go ahead and push that gain up to 11 o'clock because we're pretty dry at the moment. Okay, so we've got a pretty heavy low mid focus here, but it also has an upper mid spike going on that's kind of clanky and almost abrasive, which in a band setting, you would think that that would work great. By your own or on your own, it's gonna be a little bit annoying at times. So I'm actually gonna turn that gain up even more. We're gonna go to noon. All right, so noon, we have a decent amount of saturation. I also have pretty hot pickups. This amp does not really have as much gain as you would think that it would, being kind of marketed to the metal crowd. It's not like an all-out gain monster like a 5150 is. You actually have to push it pretty hard in order to get a really saturated tone out of it, because these are actually super hot pickups too. If you've ever played the Black Winters, they are very high output. All right, so yeah, as you can hear, pushing the gain that high really starts to kind of muddy things up again. So we're actually going to dial that bass back, and then we're gonna dial the low frequency gain down. We're gonna dial the high frequency gain up and see if we can kind of get a clearer and tighter type of gain out of it without actually touching the gain knob. I don't know what I was gonna do there. But anyways, yeah, that, as you can tell, immediately takes out a lot of that low mid muddiness that we were getting by pushing the gain that high, and add some upper mid clankiness. Let's get that gain all the way up to 3 o'clock and see how that sounds. All right, so that immediately is much better to my ears. It's definitely a lot tighter. I feel like we could probably use a little bit more top end presence and maybe dial the depth back just a tad. Yeah, that's a pretty punchy tone right there without any sort of boost in front. That actually sounds pretty good. All right, so really not bad. I mean, without a boost, I could use a little bit more saturation. Let's dial up the high frequency gain a little bit more. We'll pull that mid back and that treble back just a tad. All right, and we'll add just a little bit more gain on the front of the amp, and let's see how that sounds. I'm kind of digging that. That sounds really good on its own. It is pretty tight. It is pretty tight. Again, there's a little bit of that like weird low end roundness that I just don't love on these amps. But overall, it's very tight, and I doubt that I would even notice that in a band mix. It feels pretty good to play. It's a little bit on the drier side, if I'm being honest. It's not that super saturated. Again, 5150 type feel where the notes just kind of fly off the fretboard. You got to kind of work on this amp because it is drier. The Diablo is kind of the same way. They're not insane high gain monsters. But yeah, with all that being said, with the way that we have things set, let's go ahead and kick that boost on and see how much of a difference that makes. Honestly, it acts much like a tube screamer would. It adds some compression, it adds some mids, it kind of rounds the highs off just a tad, and it tightens the lows up a little bit. So it's almost like a built-in tube screamer. That's fine. I feel like I could get away with just having that on, dialing the gain back just a little bit, add a little bit of bass, add a little bit of treble, and just a gate out in front of the amp, and I would be okay. A little bit of an annoying mid-frequency, if I'm being totally honest, but overall, it's really not bad. All right, guys, so I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna kick this tone stack switch in the middle here to the middle. It's been in the top position the entire time. We're gonna kick it down to the middle. And that is definitely the most scooped setting on the tone stack switch. We're gonna go ahead and push it down to the bottom. And the bottom is kind of like in between the top two settings. It's a little bit more low mid focus, but it doesn't suck out of all those high mids out of the frequency. I'm having a hard time. And honestly, I kind of like that setting the best because that's where I feel the amp is at its most balanced. It's got enough low mids that it sounds full. It's got enough high mids that it doesn't sound quacky, but it's still cutting. That's where I kind of tend to live on this amp. So. I'm honestly, overall, I'm pretty happy with that, how that sounds. Again, it's a little bit more low mid focus than I would like. I'm actually gonna bump the mid control up a good bit, and hopefully that kind of puts the mids where I personally would like them a little bit more. All right, guys, so overall it sounds cool. There is a little bit of a kind of an upper mid frequency that I just can't shake from this amp. I don't hate it, but it is kind of annoying. In a band setting, it might cut through a little bit more, but from my experience, it doesn't. I also feel like this is a really dry amp. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna kick that tube screamer in again, and we're gonna see how much different the amp feels with the tube screamer engaged. All right, so that sounds a good bit better to me, but again, there's some annoying frequencies in there that I can't shake. Overall, I like it better though. It definitely tightens it up a little bit. It makes the low mids less round overall. Like I keep saying, they're kind of round, but overall, definitely not bad. I dig this tone. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that tube screamer off. We're going to kick in the Mud Killer because you guys know that I've really been digging that overdrive a lot lately, and this thing really helps to tighten up amps with a looser low end. So let's hear how the Mud Killer sounds. All right, I'm liking that quite a bit. It definitely seems to add mids where they need to be on this amp, and it really focuses the low end quite a bit. One thing about the guitar that I'm using right now, the Duncan Blackwinters have a pretty distinct upper mid kind of spike thing going on. I'm actually gonna switch this guitar out for something that doesn't have that going on and see if that annoying mid frequency is still there, because the pickups are gonna make a decent difference overall in how they work with the amp. This particular pickup could be clashing with the voicing of the Randall. So I'm gonna grab something different real quick. All right guys, I have my Balaguer Espada here. This has the Balaguer Evergreen pickups in it, which are kind of like a hot PAF. So not only are they gonna be a much lower output pickup, but they are going to be more scooped in the mids and a little bit brighter up top. So let's see how that compares. I have touched nothing on the amp. All right, so they are tighter, they are definitely brighter up top, and that low mid, or that mid frequency that was bugging me is kind of gone. So let's go ahead and add some bass, let's add some mids, pull the treble back just a tad. I'm gonna add some gain on the amp. All right, so let's actually bump that low frequency gain up, because this guitar could definitely use a little bit of fattening on this amp. I'm liking that better, but again, it's still a little too bright up top. I'm gonna roll that presence back a bit, and I'm gonna add some depth. All right, a little more mid. Dude, the Balaguer Evergreen is a great pickup. Every time I pick up this guitar, I think it sounds excellent. So this is more in my wheelhouse for sure, because I like the PAF style thing, but I think these pickups sound great. And this actually has this amp sounding a lot more like I would personally like it to sound. I'm going to dial the mid up on the pedal just a bit, and I'm gonna dial the tight control over to the fat side on the Mud Killer just to add a little bit more low end. I'm digging it, guys. I like that a lot better. We're gonna go back up to that original tone stack switch setting and see, because that has a little bit more upper mids. Let's see how that sounds with everything that we've got going on. I've changed nothing else. That's my favorite setting on this amp so far, guys. I think the pickup had a lot to do with the upper mid frequencies that I wasn't liking. I generally like that guitar. I like that pickup for different amps, but for this one, it was just like too much of an upper mid clash thing going on. With a PAF, hot PAF style pickup going into this thing, I'm definitely digging it. The only thing is I do have to have that gain cranked up pretty high in order to get the level of saturation I'm after, but otherwise, I can get the tone that I'm after with the amp, a simple overdrive, and a guitar and that's it. So I'm good with that. I dig that a lot. I'm gonna put this in drop D real quick and we're gonna call it a day. I'm not gonna do a lower tune guitar on this thing because I feel like every amp demo for this amp under the sun is already low tune guitars, so you guys know how that sounds. We're gonna stick to the E standard drop D thing here. I'm digging it at this point, so let me know what you guys think on your end. How do you think that this thing sounded? What did you hear out there on your speakers that I did not hear here in the room? That was a really tough sentence to get through. Let me know down in the comments, as I'm always curious to see what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below and I'll come down and chat with you guys about it. Down in the description of this video are all my support links, including my Sweetwater affiliate link. Click that link and buy anything in the next 2 weeks. Get yourself something nice, and I also get a little kickback. It greatly helps me out, or you could consider becoming a Patreon member and supporting the channel that way, and I would love you forever. Much like I love Kevin Pumala and all of my other Patreon guys. If you liked the video, hit the like button on the way out and consider subscribing so you don't miss any more of my Matt Damon-esque face in your living room. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.